the stat that I saw, which is interesting, which I'll kind of segue into here, is that by 2050, I saw research that it's estimated that 50% of the global population is going to have some sort of nearsightedness or myopia.
Mhm.
What is the reason for this rise of myopia? And if you were to go back to our ancestors or hunter and gatherers back in the day, where we didn't have technology, where we didn't have screens and all these lights, do you think we'd have the same level of myopia and nearsightedness that we did back in the day?
So, love the question. The easy, simple, fast answer is no. Our ancestors were likely all more farsighted. The or emmetropic is the word where you have no need for glasses. Like if somebody was perfectly zero, then they'd be emmetropic. For viewers and listeners who haven't heard the term myopia or myopic, that's nearsightedness, right? So somebody who's nearsighted, like myself, if I don't wear glasses or contacts, if I look in the distance, I can't see much. Everything's fuzzy, blurry. I can't even legally drive a car without glasses or something on. But without my glasses on, I can easily see my phone or something to read up close. So I'm nearsighted. So the reason why we're seeing this, like you said, the statistics are becoming quite alarming. Now, the statistic here in the United States, around 42% of children aged 5 to 19 are already nearsighted. In other countries, especially East Asia, it's closer to 90%. And you may think, okay, what's the big deal? Well, the challenge is that when somebody becomes nearsighted, it's not just, oh, you need glasses or you need stronger glasses. There's actually a physiological change to the anatomy of the eye. The eye actually grows longer, like deeper toward the brain. And it's not much. It's only about for to give a and to give an idea, if your eyeball grows 1 millimeter, right? That's not much. That's just a small, tiny 1 millimeter. That equals 3 diopters of change in glasses, which is enough to make somebody not be legal to drive in most cases. And if somebody is already a 3 diopter myope, their risk of other eye diseases like glaucoma, cataracts, a retinal detachment, or having maculopathy, which is it's kind of like having degeneration of the retina in the back of the eye. The risk of getting these conditions goes up by 3, 4, up to 9 to 10%. And that's only at 3 diopters, 1 millimeter of change. If they get worse, if they're closer to 6 diopters, like myself, my eye's almost 2 millimeters longer than somebody who doesn't have nearsightedness, then my risk goes already up to like 10 to 20% risk of getting these various eye diseases. So for people who are developing nearsightedness more and to a greater degree, even young kids, their risk of having blindness and permanent vision loss in their lifetime is becoming more and more likely. Now, back to your question of why. Like, why is this occurring? So it is multifactorial. There isn't just, I wish there was just like one simple answer, fix this, it would be done. It's not that easy. We know that urbanization is a part of it. We know that people who live in city areas are more likely to be nearsighted. And there's a couple ideas behind that. One is that we live in close quarters. We live in smaller apartments and buildings. When we step outside, we're not in like an open field anymore. When we step outside in a big city, you have like a small street and then even a pretty moderate sized street, but then you have a big building there. So you're not looking into the far horizon. And then being indoors, our education system has changed, right? Which I think is great because 100 years ago we used to have people who were illiterate. It was much more common, and nowadays our education system is prioritized for even young kids to learn to read, write, do mathematics earlier on. But that usually takes place indoors in a classroom, and we spend more time reading books or now even looking at tablets, phones, computer screens, and using things in close proximity has a relationship to this myopia growth. And then there is some play with light, and we don't fully understand it yet, but we know that people who do spend more time outdoors, especially in some form of light exposure, like not just being outside at nighttime, but outside during the day, there is some other play that's signaling to our eyes and to our brain to grow the eye longer or slow it down and prevent the eye from growing. And I can talk a little bit more about various treatments because there's a lot of research going into how can we slow this down. What are lifestyle factors that you can adopt? What are treatments that we can either apply through glasses, contact lenses, or even eye drops to slow this down? Um, someday we'll have a reversal for it, but there's a lot going into it, and it's definitely a concern in the industry.
Yeah, so to summarize, it just seems whatever the modern environments that we have adapted ourselves into, whether it's technology or lack of sunlight or more urbanized living environment, it just hasn't our eyes and our brains and our entire bodies haven't adapted to these modern environments, and because of that it just adjusts, through myopia,
Mhm.
especially like 90% in of children in East Asia. That is crazy. So does that also, is there studies based on that people in East Asia have a higher chance or do have higher eye diseases as they get older?
Yeah, it's definitely reflected. There's higher risks for those conditions. Now, every definitely different people. Based on your genetics, there are different risks for some conditions, but uh, myopia certainly is one of them. About 30% of nearsightedness does depend somewhat on your genetics, especially if you have a parent who not only is nearsighted but is severely nearsighted. For example, my mother, she's severely nearsighted. She's like a minus 10. My father's like a mild myope. So I kind of hit right in the middle. But then lifestyle, again, affects quite a bit the rest. My brother, for example, we have the same parents. He grew up being much more of the outdoors kid, hunting, fishing, playing baseball. I was the opposite. I stayed inside. I played video games. I watched movies. I read books. So we're very different people, but he has almost no need for glasses. And again,
Mm.
I'm a pretty moderate to almost severe nearsightedness. But back to your point, yeah, genetics definitely plays a role in the risk factor for various eye diseases, but um, we also see that amongst different populations across the world.
What would you say the percentage impact is for genetics compared to lifestyle factors? Let's say whether it's nearsightedness, whether it's something like glaucoma,
Yeah.
is it 50-50 that you can control through lifestyle? Is it like 10-90?
Every eye disease is different. Some studies now there's depending on which study you read, of course these numbers will be different. But in general, for myopia, nearsightedness specifically, it's around 30% comes from your genetics, mainly from
Mm,
your parents.
30.
So lifestyle is one of the biggest factors for myopia and severity of myopia. For other conditions like glaucoma, glaucoma is a there's different types of glaucoma. And so the one that people mostly think of is called primary open angle glaucoma. Uh, that does have some genetic risk, but you can also get it from trauma. If you're somebody who has had, a hard hit, you've been punched, or maybe a baseball or something hit you in the eye when you were young, that may increase your risk for pigmentary glaucoma. Some people, if they're on a strong medication, medication may affect their pupils inside the eye, and that could induce a type of glaucoma called angle closure glaucoma. So that's a kind of a complex one, but we do know that some people who have like black individuals usually have a higher risk factor of having glaucoma. People who are Caucasian, like myself, we have a higher risk of developing macular degeneration as we get older. That also carries a genetic susceptibility. There's a lot of different studies looking into genetics and how that affects us.
Yeah, because I wonder how much natural sunlight, like what impact
Mhm.
that has. Because I understand also generally dark skinned people have a harder time absorbing sunlight from vitamin D and all that stuff. And I wondered if that has something to do with that, because I understand there is some impact that sunlight can have in terms of myopia and
Mm.
um, just lack of natural sunlight in general can impact that.
Right. So sunlight is definitely an interesting thing. It obviously affects our human physiology quite a bit. It affects our psychology even. With the eyes, so there is the concern of if you're in sunlight, specifically UV light. UV light does penetrate through our eyes. It actually penetrates through the surface of your eye, the cornea, more when you're a kid than when you do when you're an adult. It also penetrates through the lens of the eye more as you're a kid than an adult. So, UV light getting to the back of the eye is a concern. It does increase your risk of getting cataracts, macular degeneration, a couple other things. Um, so, sunlight can affect negatively to inside the eye as well as the surface of the eye. For myopia, what they're starting to kind of understand is there is some sort of an impact on types of light and wavelengths of light have some sort of uh, signaling difference inside the eye that we don't fully understand. And this mainly comes from research looking into red light and forms of red light therapy, also under the name bio or photobiomodulation. And this is being studied pretty heavily in East Asia, not here in the US at this time, but uh, they're looking at using that to not only slow down the development of myopia, but to even prevent its development in the first place. The studies right now, if people have heard about red light therapy or have even started using it themselves, right? It's been out for forms of muscle soreness, certain types of neuropathy or nerve pain, also hair growth. There's a lot of things that's kind
It's
of
like a magic bullet, right? It does wrinkles. It's good for
yeah.
collagen. Like it's a super pill.
And I think we're still starting to kind of figure it out. The eyes are a bit more sensitive because if you give too much energy, right? If you just say, "Hey, I'm going to buy whatever red light device on the online, I'm going to stare into it," well, that may not be good because if it has too high of a power density or you do it for too long, it could cause permanent damage to the tissues in the back of the eye. And so there's certainly a lot of safety concerns, and we're being very cautious as an industry around that. The studies in children specifically are using around 650 nanometers of light. They're having kids stare at it for 3 minutes in the morning and again 3 minutes in the afternoon, typically about 5 days a week. And again, they're finding that kids this that are doing this in these studies have slower rates of nearsightedness development. And then the kids who don't have nearsightedness yet, that's actually delaying or preventing them from developing nearsightedness. And so it's really an exciting time to see that research. But again, I think it'll still be probably a good 5 to 10 years, assuming it all goes well, still probably 5 years at least before we start seeing, at least here in the United States, really controlled safety studies around those devices. So it's still an exciting time, but it tells us that there is something to do with light. We don't fully understand it yet, uh, but at the very least, they do know from just lifestyle studies that kids and even college age students who spend at least 2 hours a day outside playing in sunlight do have a reduced risk of advancement in nearsightedness. And so they're not sure if it'll fully prevent um, myopia, but or sorry, I have it backwards. They know that it'll basically prevent the development of nearsightedness, but if somebody already has myopia, they're not fully sure if it's going to completely slow it down or not.
Mm. Yeah.
But we do try to encourage children and parents to consider spending at least around 1.5 to 2 hours a day outside playing to counteract all of the indoor near demands that modern lifestyles typically require.
Yeah. So you're saying mom was right all along. No more video
Absolutely.
games. Stare. Yeah, I remember being in Korea. I would be playing video games since I was like 5 years old, and like we just have a routine every day. And she would like tell us to look up at the moon, and I was like, this is like some fairy tale stuff. Like I'm gonna be totally fine. Like I don't know why I'm doing this, and
Yeah,
there's some truth to that, I guess.
there is. Again, we don't fully understand it. One of the theories, I'll at least share this. So, one theory of why myopia could be advancing especially with near work, right? Whether you're playing video games or you're looking at an iPad, a phone, or even just reading a book. They find that the difference between reading a book, paper, versus staring at a screen, really no difference in the advancement of nearsightedness. Uh, and it's funny because I have a friend she's a medical professional. She's a family care provider, but she's got an old medical book from the 1800s that she bought at like an antique store. And I found the eye care section, and even the eye care section of that book said and warned about the amount of time reading, especially at nighttime under low light situations, you will have an increased risk of nearsightedness. Like they even knew it back then.
Mm.
Uh, but one of the theories or ideas is that when we focus on an object up close, our eyes technically aren't focusing directly on that flat page of a book or on the screen of like an iPad. Your eyes have what is called a lag of accommodation. And this means that your eye is technically focusing just an inch or an inch and a half behind what you're trying to focus on. So even though I was like, as a kid, I was playing like Game Boy, I was focusing on the screen, or I felt like I was focusing on the screen, but in reality, my eye was focusing on like the battery pack behind the Game Boy. And our eyes do that because they're lazy, right? They don't want to put as much effort into it as they absolutely need to. They want to get by with just as little effort as they can. And with that, the image of the Game Boy in this example is technically being focused not on the plane or the center of my retina. It's actually focusing slightly behind the retina. It's actually focusing behind the eyeball. And so that hyperopic defocus, that's the term, because it's being defocused behind the eye, somehow is signaling for the eye to grow longer. Again, the axial length grows longer. And so that is a part of that role. When you're indoors and you're focusing on all these near tasks, the light isn't focusing 100% where it needs to inside the eye. It's actually focusing behind it. And that's how the new treatments that are being developed to slow down myopia and treat it, or I should say manage it, those are playing on that same philosophy. And that includes soft contact lenses that are like they're what are called multifocal contact lenses. But then they also have orthokeratology or ortho K contact lenses, and even some forms of glasses. They now kind of diffract the light in a way so that the light doesn't focus directly behind the eye, especially in periphery of the kind of the periphery of the retina. It's all landing in the correct position, and that has been shown to slow down the development of myopia up to about 50%.
Wow.
So again,
Interesting.
it goes to how complex it is. There's several different facets to it, but if we can control this one part of it, it can slow it down by up to about 50%.
So those new contact lenses and glasses that are coming out that are kind of changing the way the light's being reflected, those are designed so that our eyesight won't get worse when we're wearing those glasses, at least as worse as it has been without those.
Yeah.
Got
And
it.
so they already have glasses in various parts of the world outside the US. Nothing's been FDA approved here in the US just yet for the eyeglasses component. But we do have some contact lenses that have been FDA approved that kids as young as 8 years old are being fit in those. There's also, it's not technically FDA approved yet, but there's some eye drops that doctors will prescribe off label, or low dose atropine eye drops. Uh, they don't fully understand how that one works either, but that also is something that doctors will utilize. So there are options.
Interesting. And is that something they can use where even if they have perfect eyes, they could wear those glasses when they're reading so that it prevents them from getting worse in the first place? Because it seems like if you're wearing contacts or glasses, those are only helping people that already have bad eyesight. But if you want to try to get someone when they've got 20/20 vision, are there glasses going to be made for that as well, or is that the idea is only for prescription for now?
I haven't seen any research that would imply that it would prevent the development of myopia at this point, specifically for those products. I think that's a good idea, though. Uh, I think there are certainly kids who have been identified at high risk, like they have parents who are strongly nearsighted, and we have certain age norms, like we normative data that we know, hey, your kids at age 5, they should be this level of hyperopia, like a +1, but your kid's already at a plano, they're already at emetropic at that age, then we already know they're likely heading the direction in the next year or two that they're going to be nearsighted. Then perhaps there would be some utility considering some form of myopia management. Um, but I'll have to look deeper and see if there's any publications specifically on glasses or certain contacts or even the atropine eye drops to be effective in those cases.
Yeah, yeah. So in general, it seems that it beyond just the fact that we're or reading these books or looking at our screens at close proximity, it's also the light that also matters. So it does. So you're saying when we're looking or reading in low light, it also affects how our eyes worsen because eyes will just be even laser. It'll be even more delayed in terms of what we're staring at when we're reading versus if we had really great lighting on the same book in the same proximity.
Yeah, so lighting, even if you're indoors, right, like you're saying for reading a book or something, the amount of good lighting that you use does affect how crisp of an image you see it. It affects how strongly your eyes have to adjust your pupil size. So that may play a role in all of it as well. Certainly, increasing demand of your focus attention. So uh, I'm not exactly sure to what extent that is, but we do know that again, even older books and things like that would say, hey, don't, like that old book that my friend had from the 1800s. It even said, don't read books after the sun has gone down. Don't read by candlelight. It was kind of funny that
Mm.
I was just amazed by that. I'm like, older knowledge, wow, they didn't fully understand everything that's going on as we do now, but they at least had the general concept down. So it's kind of cool.
Huh. Yeah. Well, they also had some crazy thoughts there too, like not using anesthesia for surgery, and
Yeah,
they thought
they've
babies
got
didn't feel pain and stuff like that, like some
we've
crazy
come a
shit.
long ways in a few hundred years. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because a lot of the reading that I do is just like blue light on a
Mm,
Kindle or on my phone, and I've been doing that for a while, and I guess I wondered the impact of blue light. You talked about the benefits of red light, but there seems to be this like wave of a little bit timidness of blue light. They have these red light blockers now, blue light blocking glasses. It's like we're totally red now. Not to get political, we're totally for red now instead of blue, and it seems like there's this fear against blue light. So, what is the impact of like what's the harm of blue light? Is there any harm in terms of blue light at all, apart from what we understand is suppressing melatonin so that it can prevent your sleep?
right. So blue light is a complicated topic, and I think it's been blown up quite a bit, mostly by companies that are just trying to sell you something. Um, just to kind of break it into three parts, there's the argument of, does blue light cause damage to the retina in the back of the eye? That has been kind of been hypothesized and been a concern in the industry for like 30 years. It's not a new thing. Uh, I'll talk about each one of these things. The other concern is, does blue light affect our eye strain? That's a whole separate debate because especially during 2020 COVID and everything, people were buying blue light glasses all the time because they were worried because their eyes were strained from being inside staring at the computer all day. And then there's the concern of blue light and its effect on our sleep cycle, and even concerns if blue light affects myopia development. They're not really sure on that one yet. I have friends who do research on rhesus monkeys using blue light, and they find it's kind of haphazard. It's when they shine blue light and raise monkeys in a blue light environment, some monkeys develop myopia, but some don't. So it's not really conclusive. If we take each one by section, does blue light cause damage to the back of the eye? In isolation, in vitro, right? If they put retinal cells on a petri dish and they shine intense blue light on it, yes, the retinal cells, they die faster. They develop oxidative stress at a higher rate. And so there is some in vitro or testing evidence that it could potentially be hurtful to the back of the eye if there's enough damage or cumulative damage over time. However, in human studies, we don't necessarily see that follow through, because when you test in a human, the back of the eye has all other types of protective structures, and um, it's trying to constantly feed energy, nutrients to protect the retinal cells. Where in a petri dish, it doesn't have that support, and so uh, in sunlight, obviously, if you're in direct sunlight for hours and hours, for years and years, and you're not wearing sunglasses, you're not protecting the eyes, those individuals, we have many studies that show people who are exposed to that level of blue light, because the most intense blue light you will see comes from the sun, not from your computer screen.
Right.
But that level of blue light exposure is associated with higher rates of myopia, or not myopia, but macular degeneration, as well as potentially cataracts. And that's believed to be, again, due to high amounts of over years and years of sunlight exposure. But then when we study the amount of energy of blue light exposure coming from your computer screens, your indoor devices, it's not even close.
Mm.
It's such a small amount of blue light and a small amount of energy that we just don't see any long-lasting uh, metabolic damage to the retina in the back of the eye. So at this time, it doesn't look like blue light can damage the tissue of the eye. As far as eye strain, I say first up, the studies on eye strain and blue light glasses are crap studies.
Ah,
uh,
interesting.
and the reason I say that is because and it makes sense. It's hard to do a study like that, because how do you do a double blind, right? The people using the glasses know they're wearing glasses that have a yellow filter on them. They know the doctors, the researchers can see that they have blue light glasses on, and it's also very costly. If you A lot of these studies pick like, hey, we're going to have people who have eye strain after people who have report eye strain while being on the computer, and then they have them do a computer task for 2 hours, and they have them wear these blue light glasses, and then they just do a survey. Hey, do your eyes feel better? Basically. Well, 2 hours on a computer when most people spend close to 13 plus hours a day. It's like asking a marathon runner, saying, "Hey, I want you to put on these sunglasses while you run for just 10 minutes, and then tell me, do your legs feel better?" Like it's not a
Incomparable.
very well designed study, and part of that is just because research is expensive. Um, so right now, studies on eye strain inconclusive. Uh, we think that maybe blue light glasses help reduce like the brightness. It's more of like light sensitivity that it may be helping people. But anecdotally, I ask a lot of my patients and a lot of other doctors. A lot of people claim, yeah, that blue light glasses help them with eye fatigue on the computer. Could just be placebo, right? Placebo effect is a very strong and real thing. Uh, but we're still right now, as far as eye strain concerns, a little bit on the fence. Uh, but then, like you said, sleeping. Like we know that light exposure affects your melatonin release, and then that affects your sleep cycle. And so the simple answer is the best answer is to take breaks or actually shut down your devices in the late evening. If you have LED lights, like LED light bulbs do give off more blue light than your incandescent lights, the older yellow toned lights. So if you are really bothered by lights, you could even change your house lighting to be more of a yellow tungsten color in the evening. The the issue with the blue light on the screens. So you know that they have those apps, right?
Yeah.
Almost every even just like Apple and people have like a computer night mode that makes your screen look a yellow orange color. They have studies, clinical studies that show that that is effective. In fact, they may even be more effective than most of these red or dark orange blue light glasses that exist. Now, I think if people want to go the route of the darker orange glasses, they can do that. But they can also just move their phone twice as far back.
Mm.
There's what's called the inverse square law. So if you have blue light coming from your screen device, if you move it twice as far, you just reduced your blue light exposure by 4. So just turning your screen to a yellow dark mode, pushing it further back, and then ultimately shutting down your devices in the evening, that will probably impact you better than just buying most types of blue light glasses.
Yeah, that's helpful because it's really hard to know with all the marketing that's going on, and it seems like a trendy thing to be having these blue light blocking glasses. So ultimately, like the harm thing about most harmful blue light is from the sun, which
Mhm.
just wear sunglasses outdoors. And then when it comes to blue light that comes from our screens, it's really mostly for sleep. That's kind of what, maybe eye fatigue as well. But you can use, these orange creating screens. Do you have any software that you use personally when you're working?
Yeah, so on my phone, obviously, I do turn on the night modes that are built into the phones. With my computers, I've tried different ones over the years, and before they had the night mode built into them, I had used some software that was only like $3 that would turn it orange or kind of a yellow color. But now, yeah, everything's just kind of built in; it does it automatically. I think a big thing that people don't really think about, especially when it comes to eye strain on the computer, is your ergonomics. A lot of eye strain comes from poor ergonomics, the how you use your neck. Actually, your neck muscles, interestingly, are tethered to your eye movements, and then you also have blinking. Yeah, we tend not to blink as much when we're on the computer screen, or completely. Our eyes don't close all the way when we're focused on a computer screen a lot of the time. And so that results in your tears, just the liquid of your tears being exposed to the air. And so your tears dry out. And then you end up with dry eyes. So people
Mm.
come in and they're like, my eyes feel tired. I feel fatigued. I have this eye strain. And it's what we term computer vision syndrome. Um, but that all is kind of tied into it,
Yeah. Um, have you heard of, which I'm sure you've heard of, the Bates method?
for sure.
So, well, first of all, can you explain what that is for people that don't know what that is, and just give us your thoughts on that
Yeah.
because I thought it was really interesting when it came up.
So there's this old ophthalmologist, this old eye surgeon from, I believe, the late 1800s or early 1900s. I don't remember exactly where he's from. But he had this theory that he could just do various kind of eye exercises to reverse his need for glasses. And he published a book on it. He like held seminars. But even back then, he was largely laughed at by the medical community. And this is you'll see multiple different tribes of different people online that have basically kind of sold their own version of this, their own kind of coaching courses, claiming that they can do eye exercises and reverse their need for glasses. And unfortunately, it doesn't truly, it doesn't work on myopia. It doesn't work that way. I think there are cases where people will have some improvement in their vision, but it's not working with eye exercises the way they think it is. So there is what's called pseudomyopia. This is where people who are either imagine being farsighted or no need for glasses, you have perfect vision, but they have a muscle spasm inside of the eye. The muscle, so inside the eye, people don't know this. So the eyeball has muscles on the outside of the eye to control how your eyes are moving left, right, or if you're going to look at something near or even look at the tip of your nose, you cross your eyes. So those are the extraocular muscles. But then on the inside of the eye, not only do you have pupillary muscles that control the size of your pupil, but then you have a muscle behind that, or kind of the root of the iris, called the ciliary body. And the ciliary body muscle uh, constricts and then changes and pulls on zonules, which are kind of like these spokes that change the size of the lens inside the eye. And the changing size of the lens helps focus on things up close. So we see a lot of kids now, especially again during the pandemic, they would spend all day long staring at their phone, doing near tasks. And so they're flexing this muscle inside the eye. They're flexing that ciliary body. They're focusing on a phone. And then they look in the distance and they can't see clearly anymore. And that's because the muscle spasm, the ciliary body, is more or less spasmed in that one position. And so then they're looking in the distance and they're thinking, "Oh, I can't see." And so then they go in to see an eye doctor. And you'd hope that the doctor would catch this and they would then give appropriate education, and then they would wean themselves off of staring at the phone or the computer screen for a long time, and eventually the muscle spasm would let go. But a lot of times that doesn't happen. A lot of times, doctors end up prescribing glasses for nearsighted, and sometimes it even becomes what we call over minusing. And a big part of our schooling and education on prescribing glasses is to avoid prescribing or giving over minus, too much minus, and that corrects for myopia. And so I think a lot of people who do come out and they say, "Hey, I was able to do exercises," or "I don't need my glasses anymore." If they're young, it's probably because they had pseudomyopia and were using their eye muscle too much, and then they basically learned to relax that muscle and let it
Mm.
go. But it didn't technically change the axial length of the eye. Like we talked about before, it has to do with the true length of the eyeball. Doing those eye exercises didn't change the length of the eye. They really just helped relax the muscle inside the eye when it was being overused. Some people will come out in their 40s, 50s, or above. I even saw more recently a big name in kind of the body biohacking world come out and say that he reversed his need for glasses. He doesn't need glasses anymore. But in my head, and other eye doctors, we kind of laugh at this. We're like, it's because you're middle aged, and now the lens inside his eye is starting to crystallize. Um, Once we get over the age of 40, we start to see significant crystal changes inside the lens inside the eye, which is, we either term presbyopia, but it's really the very early beginnings of what are called cataracts. And when this crystalline changes happens, then you have a refractive index change. The light focuses differently through the lens, and you see a reversal of myopia. You actually see people who are nearsighted become a little less nearsighted.
Mm.
And so when this guy came out more recently claiming, "Hey, he did the eye exercises and they reversed it," I'm like, your lens is changing, and that's why you're no longer nearsighted. It's not because you did these exercises."
Did you call him
Uh,
out on it?
uh, I haven't. It's one of those things where it's like I would rather provide accurate information. I'd rather not start boxing fights with people. Um, but perhaps someday I do. I will have to. Um, I'm good friends with a lot of some of the leading experts where eye exercises can be beneficial, and that's often prescribed and used for cases where people have had like brain injury or they've had
Mm.
strokes. And that's not as much of like I'm strengthening the muscle in the eye; it's improving the coordination and uh, the way the brain communicates to the eye muscles. Because the muscle inside the eye, the ciliary body, it's not skeletal muscle. You can't train it the way you train your bicep. It's smooth muscle, so you're not gonna improve its amplitude or anything. You're gonna improve the coordination of what your brain is telling your eyes to do. So there's a lot of people out there who just, I think, don't understand the anatomy and the physiology of the eye, and so they think, "Hey, I've improved it, so it must be working this way." And it's like, well,
Mm.
no. I mean, you hit on something, but it's really working for you because something else was going on that you didn't know or didn't fully understand.
Yeah, people see it as black and white, right? They did something, and therefore, and this happened, and then therefore that's it. They can't go those 4 or 5 level layers deep like you just did to explain different scenarios, different variants, depending on the age, what happens.
Yeah.
And it seems like Bates' methods. It seems like his main theory was the core problem is that he thought it was eye strain. That was the core reason why people had bad eyesight. And all of his solutions like sunlight and cupping the eyes to relax
Mm.
it can
So
only, yeah.
yeah, cupping is kind of fascinating. Ideally, it really doesn't do much. For people who are have never heard of this technique. It's basically like warming your hands, and then you put like kind of a cupping shape over your eye, which I think, from a very simplistic standpoint, if you're just closing your eyes, giving your eyes a break, it feels good, right? If your eyes have been strained, if you've been using them all day, and the little bit of heat that can help just draw um, more heat to around the eyelids, which we know also helps with oil production in your for your tear film. There's just little oil glands in the eyelids called meibomian glands, and with heat, some of the oil from those glands can release a little bit. So then you improve your tear film. So there's some benefits there, uh, but ultimately, it's not really doing anything to the eye. It's not doing anything
Mm.
magical. If people are doing it incorrectly and actually pushing on their eye, like with the palm of their hand, then if they do it long enough, you could induce a warpage to the surface of your eye, which again we do intentionally with some types of contacts called orthokeratology or ortho K contacts. We actually do that intentionally because then if you warp the cornea just right, you can have improved vision. Uh, and so that's a different type of technology. But I can see a case where people maybe did cuppings and pushed on their eyes so hard that they almost induced them.
Yeah. So I just want to tie a bow here for people that probably just want the basic facts. If you were to provide some, what are the top needle movers? What are the big dominoes that people should do, whether they have bad eyesight now or whether they're just looking to prevent it from getting worse? What are the things that they should do to prevent their eyes from getting worse? Like the top three.
Oh, top three. In my opinion, if I was going to pick top three, I would say, ooh, this is a challenge. I mean, I can list off a couple of here, but
You can list off as many, yeah. If more the
okay.
merrier. People can choose their top three.
So we already touched on, especially if you're young, if you have kids, getting them to spend more time, at least 1.5 to 2 hours a day outside. I think from a young growth perspective, that's one of the easiest things you can start doing, right? It's free. You just got to
Yep.
spend that time.
With
Uh,
sunglasses at that
Sunglasses,
early age. Yep.
yeah. Again, more UV light does penetrate the eye when you're young, and so at all ages, it's good to have UV light protection because the surface of the eye, as well as inside the eye, can be affected by harsh, intense sunlight. Um, if you don't have sunglasses or you just don't like to wear them or your kid doesn't like them, then at least a hat, a wide brim hat, that reduces the sunlight exposure by at least 30%. You still have the light bouncing off the ground hitting them in the eye, but at least it's
Mm.
it's cutting down on some of it. The uh, so sunglasses is a big one. Not only just seeing an eye care provider on a regular basis, I think is something a lot of people who are like, "Oh, my vision's fine. I don't need to see an eye doctor." It's like, well, actually, you have a lot going on inside the eye. A lot of systemic diseases show up inside the eye. I catch diabetes every single week. People didn't know they were
Wow.
diabetic. My father, he almost had a stroke. His eye doctor caught him his blood pressure because his blood vessels in the back of the eye were showing signs of stress. You can bleed inside the back of the eye from things like high blood pressure. Autoimmune conditions show up inside the eye. Certainly, unfortunately, brain tumors and things will catch that in people's vision. And then there's other blinding eye conditions like glaucoma. People don't feel glaucoma. People don't feel a lot of eye diseases. They don't know something's wrong until it's too late.
Mm.
And so I do think it's better to be proactive. And even if you feel like you have perfect eyesight or your kids have perfect eyesight, they haven't complained, it's still worthwhile to just get a comprehensive exam at least every 2 years, if not every year, just so that your doctor can look in, make sure things are healthy, and give a stamp that everything's okay. You're not missing anything major. Uh, Outside of that, I do think diet plays a big role in eye health, especially long term. Your risk for certain conditions like macular degeneration, even cataracts. We know that uh, people who eat healthier, who live healthier lifestyles, who don't smoke or drink as heavy, they don't develop cataracts as fast. Um, we know for macular degeneration, people who eat diets that are rich in green leafy vegetables as well as oily fish have up to about a 40% decreased risk of developing or progressing in macular degeneration at an older age. Um, People who don't know, macular degeneration is where the vision in the center part of your eyes, like the bullseye of exactly what you're going to be focusing on if you're going to read something, see your friend's face, that center part of your vision deteriorates. And it's largely an inflammatory and metabolic disease that affects the back of the retina. And diet can significantly affect how much nutrients, antioxidants, and anti-inflammatory particles are getting to that tissue to help fight the aging changes.
Mm. What are some of those superfoods? Because the myth, or I don't know if it is the myth, but the thing that you hear growing up is, a carrot a day keeps the nerdy glasses away. And that's meant to be this superfood that, you're supposed to chew on so that you have great eyes and all that stuff. Is
Yeah.
that is that really a superfood, or are there better foods that we should be optimizing for?
So I will say carrots do have a role, mainly. So the reason people say that is actually based off of an old myth from, I think, World War II.
Hmm.
It was actually uh, so back, I think, in World War II, it might have been World War One, but I think it was World War II. The British had developed a sonar, or not sonar, but a type of um, like what word am I trying to think of? They developed radar of some kind. That's it. They developed radar to detect German warplanes, and they didn't want the Germans to know that they had this technology, because the Germans would send warplanes by night. And so they put out their own propaganda amongst their own people, because they knew the Germans would obtain that propaganda, and they would say, "Hey, our scouts can detect German warplanes because they eat their carrots and they have great night vision."
Mm.
And so that's one of the reasons. There's a couple others, because they were also promoting people to grow their own food in their backyard, and carrots are easy to grow, so they're also promoting that. But that's kind of how that myth started. Now, vitamin A, which your body, when you eat carrots, it actually is beta carotene, right? Beta carotene, or if you're eating other vegetables like sweet potatoes, for example, have a high amount of beta carotene. Your body will convert that to vitamin A when you happen to be low or deficient in vitamin A. And your body will use vitamin A as part of phototransduction and how the retina can see light, or perceive light, and send that signal to the brain. So it does have a role. And people who unfortunately are like malnourished, people in parts of the world who just don't have access to good foodstuffs and good nutrition, they can be vitamin A deficient. And in those extremes, then they can have night blindness. They can have severe uh, dryness on the eye to a level that you can't even imagine. Um, there actually is like scarring that occurs on the surface of the eye from how dry it is. And so vitamin A does play an essential role, but most people, unless they have a digestion issue, or they had they're like a lap band or something for weight loss, and they're not eating enough. So people who maybe are malnourished, they're at a risk of vitamin A, but most people are not at risk of vitamin A deficiency affecting their vision. So I still think it's good to eat carrots. They have
Yeah, yeah.
certainly. That's
You're
my long-winded
debunking
answer.
my childhood myths here. So you're saying Popeyes also didn't get buff from eating spinach?
Well, actually, I don't know. I mean, spinach is actually quite still good for the eyes. Again, green leafy vegetables. So why you earlier I mentioned, like, they know that people who eat more green leafy vegetables have less risk of conditions like macular degeneration. The reason for that is because there's high levels of certain carotenoids
Mm.
inside those types of vegetables. Uh, so two of them, one's called lutein, another one's called zeaxanthin. These are highly concentrated in green leafy vegetables. They're also found in egg yolk a little bit, not at high concentrations, but they are there. But these are fat soluble carotenoids that your body uses because they have a high antioxidant capability, as well as an anti inflammatory role. And when you eat lutein and zeaxanthin, they deposit inside the eye at a really high concentration. And they work as filters if you look at them, they're kind of a yellow golden color, and they sit in the front layers of the retina and protect the eye from blue light.
Mm.
And so one of, again, the healthiest things you can be doing, even at young age, they find even for kids, not only does it help with their eyesight, but it helps with cognition. It's really good for your brain too. Uh, but getting more lutein and zeaxanthin in your diet is an excellent way to basically protect your eyesight and reduce your risk of various eye diseases.
Yeah,
Um,
so leafy green vegetables, egg yolks, a carrot, I guess you can add that in there
yeah.
as well. What are some other superfoods that are
So
great?
oily fish has again been consistently found to reduce risks of not only macular degeneration but also other retinal diseases like diabetic retinopathy. Um, the
Is that from the
reason,
omega-3? Like, can you just take a
yeah,
little omega-3 supplement? Yeah?
yeah, that's primarily the belief is that it comes from the omegas, because the retina in the back of the eye, about 50 to 60% of the fatty acid content of the photoreceptors is all DHA omega 3.
Mm,
That's a lot of percentage, for that tissue to contain that level.
wow.
And so they 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 have done a lot of studies on both omega 3 supplements, but they've also done studies on just people who eat more fish. And they find it's pretty consistent that people who eat more naturally occurring fish have less risk of these various retinal issues. Fish oil studies are a bit more inconclusive. They they do find overall it's beneficial, but they don't find it to be as beneficial as eating the oily fish. And we're just starting to kind of get on to maybe why that is. There's some more recent research into different types of omega 3s, not just EPA, ALA, and DHA that some people may be aware of, but there's a type or isomers of omega 3s, and there's a type of isomer called a lipophosphatidylcholine DHA. There's the fancy word of the day, uh, but that is found a little bit more commonly in naturally occurring fish sources, and not as much in fish supplements or fish oil
Mm,
supplements. And this fancy type of DHA or LPC DHA has a better availability. It There's a certain transporter in our neural tissue, in our brain and in the retina, that transports this DHA into that neural tissue at
mhm.
a more efficient rate than just normal fish oil, um, or other forms, other isomers of DHA and omega 3s. So they're just now starting to do some research publications in the last 10 years, finding that when animals are supplemented with this type of DHA, that they have less risk of Alzheimer's and dementia and other brain issues, better memory, but also less risk of retinal diseases. So I imagine in the next decade or so, we hopefully will uh, probably start seeing products specifically labeled or marketed with uh, a these different type of isomers of DHA, because it may be more efficient for our brains to be getting that type of supplement.
Yeah, the whole omega-3 supplement topic is kind of iffy because I know there's so many omega-3 supplements in general that are just low quality and just how oxidized they become. I mean, you need to get really you gotta pay up for really good quality stuff. I pay like $80 for my omega-3
Yeah.
from, like, the Nordics, it's just you can't really trust getting it from Costco these days.
Yeah, I'm not the absolute expert in all omega 3s. I know I've had to dive pretty deep into it myself to better understand it. I did find that there are different types of way they make omega 3s. We know that there's ethyl ester form, which is more of an alcohol based omega 3, and it's not as efficiently absorbed into your system as triglyceride forms. The oxidation debates, those can get pretty deep. I can't honestly haven't read the research on how that affects absorption. I do know that they've done some studies looking at the oxidation of omega 3 fatty acids, that they don't have an effect on your inflammatory markers inside the body. I think it was done for after two months of ingestion. Um, but it's still, I don't know about, I don't, I think that it makes sense that you wouldn't see if it's expired or if it is of poor quality, you probably wouldn't absorb as much of the useful omega-3 fatty acids as you probably are wanting or paying for.
Yeah.
So it definitely is an interesting topic. Something I'll ask. I get to interview on my own kind of special things that I'm working on. I get to interview a head researcher who just works in a PhD in omega threes here in a few
Oh,
weeks.
wow.
So I'll see if I can dig into that and maybe post stuff about it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'd love to see that. Um, am I right to say that I saw, I think one of your videos that you take creatine pretty regularly. Was that
Mhm.
for eye health particularly, or is that just for overall brain function?
Yeah, thanks for asking. No, nothing related to the eyes that I've found in creatine specifically. I just take
Mm,
creatine for my own kind of not only my physical fitness, but also for some of the research related to kind of brain memory health, but
mm,
also depression. I know anecdotally it's helped me with my attitude, my mindset. Even days when I'm not hitting the gym, if I just take it, it definitely makes me more alert. I'm in a better mood. Um, and I've been taking it for a few years now. So I think it definitely helped me um, through a tough stage in my life.
mm.
But that could also be, I know there's research on it, but I also will throw out there, I'm also lifting weights. I'm also hitting the gym more. I'm also sleeping better. So there's a lot of other things that could potentially be confounding that. But yeah, I do take it at least 5 milligrams every day.
Yeah, dude, it's been like a mere. I always wonder like why I didn't take it sooner, because it's again, it's like the red light thing. It's kind of like a super pill. It's great for your brain, it's good for your energy, it's good for building muscle. And there doesn't seem to be this downside that a lot of people, it's like the most studied supplement pretty much, from what I've gathered.
Yeah, I know there's, if someone chooses to take it, like if I go get my lab work done, I definitely want to let my doctor know that I've been taking creatine because it'll affect my kind of my readings for my kidneys. So I think
Mm.
it's important for anybody who's taking that, just make sure you let your doctors know that you're taking it. Um, Otherwise, they're going to be worried you have like some sort of kidney dysfunction.
Interesting, interesting. Um, I read that there are uh, I don't know if this how extensive the studies are, but this idea of taking low dose atropine
Mm.
drops, slowing down myopia for kids. What are have you looked into this? Like, what are the latest research? And would love to kind of get your thoughts on the validity of it.
Yeah, so it's actually been going on for a long time. Research on atropine eye drops have been used again in East Asia for quite some time. Uh, Over the years, various studies have come out looking at various dosages, concentrations. It is a little bit all over the map. We know consistently it does have an effect at slowing the rate of myopia development.
Mm,
Uh, Usually, this is prescribed again as a possible option for kids. Usually, they're getting this drop in every single day to help. They don't exactly know the mechanism, but they know that it does help slow down the rate of myopia by about 50% or so.
wow.
The Again, the studies are a bit all over the place because it depends on the concentration. The other thing in these studies that a lot of people don't know, and this is published, but for this research, atropine has to be compounded. So there's not really a strong regulatory body that's looking at how it's being mixed or what the carrier molecule is. Like, are they just mixing it in sterile water? Are they mixing it? What kind of a bottle is it put in? Because
Mm,
the molecule of atropine is kind of unstable, and it does depreciate and lose its efficacy over time. And
mm,
if the bottle is see-through or clear, then light will penetrate through that bottle and it'll denature uh, the chemical faster.
mm,
And so this is an issue in a lot of this research is because they don't know, okay, where are you sourcing it from? How accurate are the children actually getting this dilute form of medication? Is it no longer effective? So that has been an issue. There is some new publications that just came out here from Europe. Um, it's not available here in the US, but it came out. So the regulatory bodies that study medications and their effectiveness in Europe is different than here in the US. And so they did a study. I think the 2 year data just came out in Europe. In the US, they're waiting another 2 years to finish the study before they release the data. But it is available if you know where the right channels are. But they found a new way to not only make atropine, but they put it in a new carrier molecule that keeps its stability better. And they've been tracking these kids and following them over. This is like thousands of kids over several years, and they're watching them with this atropine drop at different concentrations, and they're finding really good data. They're
Wow.
finding it's not only safe, but it's effective and it's consistent.
This is like
And
Wegovy of Ozempic.
kinda. So it's tough to say. It's too early. I don't have any control over this. So, uh, but based on that data, I feel pretty excited and confident that maybe in the next few years, especially here in the U.S. where I practice, uh, we will have like an FDA approved medication to be able to say to kids and parents that, hey, we can prescribe this drop, and hopefully insurance will even cover it,
Mm.
where kids can they just have to get used to taking an eye drop, which sometimes is tough for kids. A lot of people don't eye drops to begin with, and then you're asking
Yeah.
a kid to do it. But I think from a therapeutic, from a doctor's perspective, it's like we'll actually have like a bona fide treatment to help slow down myopia. It doesn't involve glasses or contact lenses or anything like that.
Got it. And is it like pretty much like anything like Ozempic, for example, where you have to continue to take it for it to maintain its efficacy, at least until the age that our eyes stabilize? And also, I
Right.
guess as follow up to that, I didn't even ask you, like, when do our eyes stabilize and when do they stop getting worse in general, like on
Yeah.
average?
So really good question. So they're looking at it in these studies. So they have the kids on it for 2 3 years, and then they start weaning them off the drops, and they watch if there's a rebound effect, because that is in the literature that some studies have found rebound effects where their eyes slow down in myopia for a few years when they're on the treatment, and then they take it off, and suddenly, woof, you see this massive rush where they are suddenly 2 3 more diopters stronger the next year.
Mm.
And from what I understand, the current research with this new medications, uh, they're not seeing that effect. Um, but you're right that as we get older, so kids who are younger, age 5 to about the age of 13, 14, they're at like the highest risk of myopia advancement, right? They're going to
Mm.
develop nearsightedness faster. And that's also part of it because again they're growing bodies, right? That's where we go through our greatest growth spurts, and they spend a lot of time indoors and their school demands go up. But as we get into our later teens and definitely into our early 20s, our physiology of the eye slows down just as our bodies typically slow down in their development and growth. So typically late teens we see a decrease in the advancement of nearsightedness. If somebody does continue to go through schooling, right, they go to college, even if they go beyond that, we do still see a higher risk of developing nearsightedness, mainly because they're studying, they're reading, they're spending more time indoors because their education is demanding that. Um, for cases where, let's say, you wanted to get LASIK or something, right? Some people will come in and they're like, "Hey, I want to get LASIK." If they're 18, here in the US, it's technically FDA approved at age 18. However, most doctors now will often recommend to wait because the eye is still technically in a growth period. And so, usually around the age of 23 or so is kind of a magic time where the physiology of the cornea has slowed down. And assuming they're not going to continue going to school, then we start thinking, okay, well, your prescription is stabilized, you're at lower risk of advancing. So now they may be a candidate for something like LASIK. Hopefully
Got it.
that
So
answered
around,
it.
just to be safe, like 25 plus, if you've seen a stabilization over the last a track record of 2 years of stabilizing your prescription, that's a pretty safe bet. Where like, okay, if you want to get LASIX or
Mhm.
Smile,
Yeah.
that's kind of the age to do it. I'm curious to know, because you mentioned this right off the bat, that if you have no glasses or no contacts that you can't see, meaning you haven't gotten LASIX or you haven't gotten Smile, I'm curious to know why you haven't as an eye expert.
Yeah. Myself. So this is really funny. uh, so right now I'm wearing contacts this exact moment. Um, I also not only on top of being nearsighted, but I also have pretty significant dry eye. Now I manage my dry eye really tightly. I've spent basically the last decade of my life doing a lot of at-home therapies for dry eye, whether it be eye drops, diet, focusing on lifestyle factors to control that. But I still have dry eye, and LASIK, specifically LASIK, and other forms of refractive surgery. When you have those procedures, it cuts the nerves on the eye, and they don't always grow back perfectly. And dry eye often gets exaggerated or much worse after these procedures.
Mm.
So I personally have chosen not to get LASIK because of my risk of further dry eye complications. But there is another procedure. I've done some videos on it called ICL, or intracolumnar lens, which is better for people with high prescriptions like myself. That procedure doesn't cut as much of the corneal nerves. And so I'm actually personally looking into getting that procedure uh, for myself, because I also know contact lenses can exacerbate, and if many in many cases I believe have been one of the reasons why I even have dry eye disease. It's because have been wearing contact lenses since I was 13, and contact lenses dry out the eyes faster.
Yeah, man, I had a severe issue with that to the point where so I got my well, it's called Smile, right? So I
Mhm.
guess I can't technically call it LASIK. So I got it in South Korea out of all places, and it's so common there. It's crazy that everywhere you walk around, you'll just see these signs, and it'll say like same day consultation, same day exam, 30% off. I'm like, is this like a clothing sale? Like, I've never seen such a serious operation like getting eye surgery be promoted as if like a big clearance sale that you see at like, a Walmart or something like that,
Mhm.
or like it was quite fascinating. So I did this exam on the same day in the morning, and they told me that I was a good enough candidate, but it was kind of still risky because of the dry eyes that I did have. And
Mhm.
it was really because of the fact that I was wearing contact lenses. And if I waited maybe another 5 years or so, it would have been too late for me to get this particular surgery. Um, so going back to LASIK, Smile, whatever surgery, like who is actually a great candidate to get LASIK? Let's say if they're over 25 and they want to get rid of their glasses and contact lenses,
Yeah.
versus someone that is probably not a good candidate.
So candidacy for a refractive surgery procedure, again, it depends on the exact procedure. The If somebody's over the age of 25, most people will probably be pushed towards something like LASIK or Smile. I think LASIK's been around for a little bit longer, so people are kind of familiar with that. They basically use a laser to create a flap on the surface of the eye. They fold it back. They use a different laser, to mold the surface of the eye, and then they just put the flap that they originally folded back into place. It basically self heals. It's very quick. Nowadays, it's actually very accurate, but again, they do sever a lot of corneal nerves in that process. Smile, like you've been talking about, Smile's been out for a good few years. It's becoming more popular as I think surgeons are perfecting the technique and getting more experience. They're getting a lot better with it. Uh, Smile is really cool. Are you familiar exactly how it works?
My understanding is you just cut less of the eye and you're actually cutting the shape of a smile versus the whole, like a larger portion of the eye. So you heal faster. I basically was able to start working the same day, or if not the next day right after. I was like, amazed because I saw my dad get LASIK and he had to wear sunglasses. He was out for
Mhm.
10 days. It was so painful. And I'm like, this is incredible.
Yeah, so Smile, what they do is they do create a small cut, like a little smile shape on the eye, but they actually use a different laser that basically cuts out and removes a middle layer of the cornea, and then they pull that middle layer out through that little smile cut that they made.
Mm,
Uh, I try to think of the analogy. I like thinking of like a loaf of bread, and you somehow wanted to cut out the center, like the actual center of the bread, the actual loaf part, but you wanted to leave the crust. So you'd cut like a side of the through the crust of the bread and somehow pull out the center innards of the bread loaf.
mm.
That's just to kind of give people an image. Uh, but they use lasers and it's all programmed and it's super accurate. So, but ideally for dryness, like you said, and there is research to back this up, that cutting less of the corneal nerves results in less complication with dryness. So that's typically why they promote that. But back to your question, like somebody's 25, are they a good candidate? Um, Number one is you got to go see a consultation, assuming that their vision has been stable for at least 1, sometimes 2 years. It's usually best as just an extra tip. If you're going to go in for a consultation, stay out of the contact lenses for at least 2 weeks. If you're a
Mm,
soft contact lens wearer, stay out of the soft contact lenses for 2 weeks. If you wear hard lenses, stay out for a full month. Contact lens wear can warp the surface of the eye. I had a patient just yesterday who she's been over wearing her contact lenses, and I believe she's been sleeping in them. I think she's lying to me. She says she hasn't been sleeping in lenses, but
it's embarrassing to admit that you slept in your contact lenses, right?
yeah, but I mean, like the reality is, like we're experts in this. We know when you're sleeping in them, but her surface of her eye is warped because she's the contact lenses have molded the surface of her eye. Uh, So in her case, she just needs to stay out of contacts for probably 2 to 4 weeks to let the surface rebound back to where it needs to be. But that's why we recommend that for people who are going to go in for like a LASIK consult. Their accuracy and their ability to measure the surface of the eye will be better. Um, Also, your dry eye parameters may be improved too.
Mm,
Uh, if somebody does have significant dry eye, uh, I think the profession as a whole has become a lot more kind of aware that if you have dry eye before you have surgery, your risk of more complications or dryness afterward may be higher. And
mm.
so I know a lot more specialists and surgeons in the area who are being more aggressive about let's treat the dry eye and get things under control for at least a few weeks before they consider doing surgery because they see better outcomes. They see improved accuracy, um, patient satisfaction, everything goes up. And so, yeah, if you're 25 and you're thinking, "Hey, I want to get rid of glasses. I'm thinking about LASIK or SMILE or some other refractive surgery." Not a bad idea to first, of course, find a respected surgeon in your area who's done a lot of that procedure. To maybe stay out of contacts for a few weeks, go to the consultation. If you have dry eye, ask them about if there's anything you can do beforehand or think something they would recommend, whether it be just using artificial tears, warm compresses, cleaning the eyelids with there's various eyelid cleaning wipes. Those are really good for just cleaning biofilms, bacteria, and other microorganisms and oils away from the eyelids that cause a lot of inflammation. So cleaning the eyelids on a regular basis, eye drops, warm compresses, those are usually recommended. But there are cases where we'll prescribe anti-inflammatory drops or dry eye medications to get people under control, to prep them for surgery.
Got it. Does having astigmatism change anything for the candidacy of having or being able to have LASIK or
Yeah,
smile?
another great question. So yeah, astigmatism. If somebody has mild to moderate astigmatism, that's fairly easy to still treat with those different procedures. Uh, in a long time ago, like 20 years ago, I think early on days of LASIK, they were a little bit cautious around astigmatism. But now they've improved the lasers, they've improved the algorithms, the software, and so now it's actually quite good. For people who have more advanced astigmatism, they may have to do different forms or combined procedures. Uh, there's other things like limbal relaxing incisions and other kind of techniques that they sometimes have to come up with, but still something to consult with your surgeon about. Um, but most cases of astigmatism can be solved with those sort of procedures now.
Got it. Now I got to go into this topic here because I know people are very interested. It's like your most popular video, nothing
Mhm.
to do with eye health necessarily from the inside, but it's the visual appearance. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm probably wrong in this case because it's all related. But eye bags, dark circles, this is a very common problem, especially in the age of technology and people working late, reading until late. How do we treat eye bags, dark circles, and why do they appear in the first place? What's the root cause of it?
Yeah. So, eye bags, dark circles. I've actually just been more recently diving into the research around this, especially various, uh, over-the-counter eye creams and methods that people can do to help kind of reduce the appearance of these. So, the appearance of dark circles under eye bags, they often get kind of confused a little bit. Uh, because if you have bags under your eyes, right, there's puffiness, there's some swelling, uh, the skin laxity starting to droop a little bit. Maybe you're just getting older. The It also can appear like it's dark, and so it looks like you have dark circles. And so some people confuse the terms. Other people just have true dark circles under their eyes, and this is more to do with hyperpigmentation, whether it be genetic, like their genetics have that, or due to sunlight exposure and age, they develop pigmented spots around the eye. And so we have to, in the eye clinic, we have to think of them in two different ways. Is it true pigmentation or is it just shadow effects because of the anatomy? But the main things that contribute to it, if you have swelling of the eyelids or around the eyelids because of water retention, bad allergies can cause puffiness. Your blood vessels can dilate for different reasons, and that'll create kind of this darker, like vein appearance. It kind of looks like a purple appearance under the eye. Have you ever seen
Mm.
that?
Yeah,
That can be
mostly
also
older people.
because, yeah, it can be caused by just dilation of the blood vessels, um, for different reasons. So when it comes to like puffiness of the eyes, the easy thing you can do is just a cold compress, especially in the morning, right? Add cold, like whether it be not a direct ice pack, but there's various eye gel masks that you can put in the freezer. Doing that for 10 minutes in the morning. You don't want to go over 15 minutes because that can actually cause vasodilation. It can cause
Mm.
a response and make it worse. But for 10 minutes, that'll calm down a lot of puffiness. And that's great for allergies too, just soothing, calming for the eyes. So that's an easy thing people can do. Uh, and whether somebody has puffiness or if they have like a true under eye bag or if they have a hyperpigmentation, there are eye creams that can be effective. The
Mm.
downside is it's not a miracle cure. And that's where I think a lot of people get frustrated. Uh, Various eye creams that are sold online, there's even some medical grade ones you can get from dermatologists and even some eye clinics that specialize in aesthetics. They do help. They show clinical research that they can improve fine lines and wrinkles. They can help the appearance of swelling in the eye bags, and they can help remove pigmentation, the dark circles, but it takes sometimes 12 to 14 weeks or more to have a clinical benefit.
Wow.
So if you're going to go the route of an eye cream, just know it's going to take some time. Some of the best creams, like ingredients to look for, niacinamide, vitamin C, hyaluronic acid. Those are typically the ones that are seen pretty frequently used in these eye creams. Caffeine is sometimes used in there as well to help constrict blood vessels. Uh, the one kind of thing I'll mention about these eye creams is just be cautious of the ingredients in them because there's been more and more publications coming out showing that uh, a lot of ingredients aren't really, they're poorly regulated, especially here in places like the US. Uh, Cosmetic industry can just throw whatever they want for chemicals in here and get them on the store shelf. And there's a lot of these ingredients are now being linked to not only irritation and sensitivity to the eyes, but dry eye disease, other forms of ocular surface disease, even permanent death to the meibomian glands in the eyelids. And that once those glands are gone, you can't get them back. So there's thankfully a growth now of uh, makeups, cosmetics, beauty creams, that are being designed without these kind of ingredients shown in research to cause these nasty effects. So now there's kind of eye friendly product lines that are coming out. Um, Otherwise, I think the unfortunate thing that no one wants to hear, which a lot of these eye bags and dark circles become more prominent with age, uh, people don't want to hear that that's truly the problem. And sometimes the ultimate solution is actually having surgery.
Mm,
And in that case, if somebody's tried everything, they've tried the creams, they've tried various skin procedures of the dermatologist to tighten collagen around the eyes, and they're just not getting the effect they want, then they may want to seek care from a special type of ophthalmologist. They're basically just do plastic surgery around the eyes, and they're really good. They're very talented, right? They went to school for like 12 to 16 years to specialize in what they do. Um, but just know that it's gonna take a bit more, and it's the healing process from those surgeries looks pretty bruising, but the final results are oftentimes excellent. You just want to spend the time and find the right surgeon for you.
and are those surgeries more for puffy eyes, or is it more for dark eye circles, or is it for both?
Yeah, so again, it has to do more with the anatomy. And I think for most cases, the puffiness or the eye bags, or if drooping eyelids is an issue, then again, you're probably going to think more on the lines of surgery.
Yeah.
If you have darker pigmentation around the eye, these dark circles, especially if it's truly due to pigmentation of the skin, uh, most specialists around either dermatology or in the eye care space that specialize in aesthetics, they often will start with an eye cream and see how people respond. But if that's not enough, then they'll often go the route of some sort of procedure. Right now, there are forms of IPL or intense pulse light procedures. There's microneedling. There's radio frequency. There's a couple different procedures out that different specialists will be able to offer. And so I think oftentimes consulting with dermatology first is probably the best way to go. And if somebody has dry eye disease, and if they have other concerns about, do I need a blepharoplasty, which is the term when they want to fix the eyelids and the puffiness and the drooping, then you want to, of course, consult an eye care professional and see where they're at, and
Got
just
it.
kind of include everybody in that care team.
Got it. And final topic, I just want to end this off with just kind of getting you to imagine what the future could look like based on the technologies that you're seeing, the research that you're seeing. It's one of the fascinating things that I've thought about is like the eye is really the only place in our bodies where you can non-invasively observe and see our blood vessels and our nerves. And it's fascinating that you can even detect diabetes and all these different things that are issues with our bodies without needing to do any blood tests or anything like that. So when you think about where things like AI, wearable tech, uh, the advancement of eye exams that are going, like where do you see what are some of the um, I guess predictions that you may have about the future around where eye exams are going, eye health, all these things that are coming up in the future?
It's such a good question. Yeah, the future of eye care, the future of eye health. Um, I think you kind of hit on two big topics. It's like, how is eye care going to change? Like, right? How is eye examination? How's that going to change? And then the other part is, how are we going to use our eyes differently in the future, or really quite in the near future? The eye exam component is sort of already changing. We have a lot of technology to scan the back of the eye, to read the retina, to read the blood vessels, the blood flowing in the retina, even using OCTA, or what's called OCT angiography. And a lot of this technology is already being built into either like kiosks at like a mall sort of scenario.
Hmm.
Family doctors can run these sort of things, and AI is being trained to diagnose and catch early changes in the nerve or early changes in the vasculature of the eye, uh, where oftentimes it's like a human being may not even be able to catch that.
Wow.
So it's getting really efficient. So I think that we are going to see a shift eventually I still think there's always going to be a place, of course, for human interaction, right? People don't want to just interact with a computer, especially when it's regarding their eye. If there really is a medical issue going on, uh, I'm always going to trust like the doctor who's evaluating and making those decisions, or putting their hands on my eye, rather than just trusting a computer. Um, but we are seeing those changes. AI is being used in a lot of the areas around eyes right now. I think it's going to take some time though, because there is liability concerns. From a healthcare perspective here in the US, if what if the computer's wrong? What if it makes a bad decision? Who's liable for that? Is it the doctor who's using it, or is it the company that invented the machine?
Mm,
And this is a new space for like legal frontiers. So there's those sort of questions. Um, there's also like, because we know technology is advancing so quickly, if a doctor's doing an outdated technique or using outdated technology, then they may be liable because they aren't practicing at the highest level. And so with technology advancing so quickly, like there becomes that thing, well, that device, you like your laptop you bought last week, that's already outdated.
yeah.
So I don't know how the that's going to play out, but it is fascinating to think of how much better, how fast, how accurate technology is getting in just the evaluation space, of being able to take care of eyes. I've even
Yeah.
seen a phone app. There's published data on this. A phone app that can just look at the surface of the eye and diagnose an ulcer on the surface of the eye, can recommend the right prescription, and then follow that ulcer on the eye and show that it's improving over time. And so if that's just going to be in your phone, again, that's going to improve access, and help a lot of people potentially. The future of how we use our eyes and how we see, especially with things like you mentioned, like AI glasses, augmented reality glasses. I'm super excited about that. I love tech and I love nerding out on those things and just thinking about how are we going to see the world. Um, there's like a race right now for like augmented reality glasses in the tech space.
Yeah.
And it kind of frustrates me because I see a lot of these companies aren't consulting eye care a little bit. So, like, they're not thinking about how do glasses lenses work in this? How do prescriptions work in this? Does this fit? Does this work with how eye movements work?
Mm,
How does this work for somebody who has lazy eye? Like, I think they're kind of leaving that on the table and saying like, okay, well, let's just make sure this tech works,
yeah.
which I understand. But I hope that at some point they're going to have to turn around and start consulting with us a little bit more, um, because you can imagine this technology may not work for everybody, or it could, who knows, have negative consequences for our brains, because our brains learn and develop. A lot of our brains learn and develop through vision and having good eyesight. So if now you have this false augmented reality interface in front of your eye, a screen essentially just a few millimeters, 12 millimeters in front of your cornea.
Mm,
Is this going to affect our myopia? Is this going to affect how our brain and vision develops, especially if we give it to young kids? Um, is this going to affect someone's binocularity or how they use their eye muscles? There's a lot of questions. Um, I don't have those answers right now, but I know personally I'm just excited to see how, I'll be able to drive down the road and wearing a pair of glasses, and it'll be able to tell me, heads up display how fast I'm going, or if I got an email, or if there's a Starbucks down the road. There's so many different kind of capacities it could be used. Or even while you're driving, how even if you're wearing sunglasses, if the sun is just in the right spot, it's still, you can't quite see the road. What if that technology can just put a black spot over the sun and eclipse it so that it's not shining you directly in the eye?
mm,
Um, there's a lot of potential ways it can be applied, and
yeah.
so I don't know. I don't know where it's going to go in the next 10 years.
Yeah. Especially when the technology continues to improve and get smaller and it gets more powerful. You can imagine that transition from glasses to contact lenses, where obviously it's just right in front of you. You don't even have to wear the glasses. but it's obviously more invasive as well. It's like literally inside of your eye. And that's kind of where you have to be a little bit more careful. It's always this dissociation between the exponential curve of how fast technology is moving versus how slow legislation and also the time that it takes to actually do these studies, because you got to wait like 5 to 10 years for it to actually see like what is the actual impact long term.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And then just, the reality of the cost of these sort of devices, the technology that's going into it. I know what's it, Meta a few months ago kind of released like their prototype. It's not for consumers to buy, but they showed off their prototype for like augmented reality glasses. And they said it cost like over 10 grand to produce just one of them.
Yeah, it's
That's not
crazy.
even to sell it, right? That's just for them to
Yeah.
make it. Um, and I think that would be kind of unrealistic. uh, so even a company a few years ago, they developed an augmented reality contact lens, and they gave up. They built the
Mm.
technology for the augmented reality. They said that was the easy part, but then they started to try to like engineer the contact lens from the ground up, and I think they more or less, I don't know the exact story, but I know they eventually gave up on it, probably because they realized how complicated contact lenses are, and then how expensive those lenses would probably be. And yeah, I think just the business model probably wouldn't work out, at least at
Yeah,
this
yeah.
time.
Yeah, imagine spending $1,000 and then you have a rip on your contact lenses. That's not gonna be fun, right?
Well, I imagine that that technology would probably be closer to $3,000 to $5,000 for
Yeah,
like
my
that type of
god,
a contact lens.
my god. Well, hey, really, really great having you. I love this conversation. I wanna make sure people find out more about you. Where can people learn and go through your stuff?
Yeah, thank you so much. So again, Doctor Eye Health. I'm there on YouTube. I'm on Instagram, on TikTok. So typically, just the one heads up is that unfortunately, I've been seeing a lot of like AI deep fakes of even myself show up on some of these sites.
Well,
So just keep aware out that there are some sketchy sites out there that are trying to impersonate not just myself, but other doctors on the internet. So you can be sure if it says Doctor Eye Health spelt DOCTOR, like doctor is spelled out, and then EYE for eye, and then health. And hopefully you'll be able to tell that it's me and not somebody impersonating me.
yeah, that's the dark side of technology that we did talk about, right?
Hmm.
But all right. Awesome, guys. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. And Dr. Ali, I appreciate you for coming on.
Thank you.